Hello everyone, in this video of Salesforce testing with Virtuoso, we will be covering how we can make use of existing API test to create your own new API test of different objects in Salesforce. For example, in this video, we will be using create account API test to set up create contact API test. So instead of requiring you to figure it out how to get started, what we have done is to put together a template that we can bring into Virtuoso. Now what the template includes is your environment where you can configure things like your URL, passwords, username. It also got some pre-made goals and journeys. So journeys are test cases for things like logging in, some examples to create account, create opportunity. It also have some API calls like token calls, create account API calls, create opportunity API call, and some test data as well. So to get the test project, you can come across our Discord server and the link is at the bottom. We have even covered in our previous video how you can import the code and start using it. For the convenience, I have already imported that goal and it looked like this. So there's a goal called as my first virtuoso Salesforce goal. Once you go inside this, you'll find out some journeys, logging in, create account, create opportunities. It even contains some API testing like get token, create account, create opportunity, and including the environment where you can set up your URL, username, password, and so on. So let's get started. The step one would be to identify all the mandatory fields to create contact inside an existing account. So let's quickly jump into the Salesforce and identify them. So as we are in the Salesforce instance and we are inside the account, you can go to any account. As we are inside account, we click on new contact button. As it opens up the new contact page, we can identify there are salutations, first name, last name, and the title. Once identified, we can write it down in our notepad like this to make a note. So now coming to step 2, once identified, navigate to the Salesforce documentation for contact object references details. The link is at the bottom. So once on this page, let's look for the identified mandatory fields for the contact object, such as account ID, first name, last name, salutations, and title. Please make a note that these are the exact keyword that we'll be passing as an input variable in our API test. So now the step 3 would be to navigate to the Virtuoso dashboard and start creating our API test. Once in the dashboard, navigate to the API testing. Once you're on the page, click on the create account three dot, clone the API. This will create a copy of and create account API. Now let's start reusing it. So we'll start reusing it by changing the name to create contact, as the subject API name for create account was account. So now it will be changed to contact. The endpoints and the versions will be captured from the environment. Now let's remove the not required fields that were used in the create account and add the required fields for the create contact API. So I'll start removing by number of employees, names, account number, billing street, city, postal code, counting, rating, and that's it. Now let's start adding our mandatory fields for create contact. So we'll start with account ID, first name, last name, title, and salutation. Token will be taken from the get token API call as a response. Now it's time to make change to the body of our post method. So quickly make a change, and the change would look like this, which would consist of all the fields such as account ID, title, first name, last name, and salutation. Now just check if your output mapping has been mapped with the response and value the response dollar. And as all the whole API test is set up, we click on save button so that it creates our new API test, create contact. So now let's jump into the journey and see how we can implement these. So just click on the project dashboard. Once the project dashboard, let's navigate to the goal. Once in the goal, let's create a new journey for create contact with API call. Click on save button. So we have already created a reusable library checkpoint for logging in, token, and the create account via API. You can make use of them by clicking on add library checkpoint, select from the list and add it. Similarly, for token, you can type token, add it, account API. This basically creates an entire flow for us. We navigate to the Salesforce, logging in, creating token, making a token, get token API call, token getting saved in token that will be reused in the further steps, and even the create account API or the Salesforce create account, and even saves the record ID as in your variable. Now let's create our checkpoint to create contact via API. By writing a name, we may need some additional step to pass our data to our API call such as first name, last name, and title. So we will use generate random to generate those data. Just make sure the variable name is similar to what we have passed on to our input mappings. Similarly for last name, similarly for title. Salutation will be captured from our tester table that can be managed by clicking on the three dots and moving to manage test data. And there's an existing data table where have a salutation field so that it would be captured from this table itself. You click on save button. Now let's make an API call to create our create contact API. So just write down API call and give it a name as Salesforce dot Salesforce.create contact. Pass on the variables, returning response to dollar response, and click on save button. This makes an API call and shows us the result that these API call is successfully done, and we see status as 201. You can even assert the responses by adding in steps to assert response status as 201. Click on save. It performs the action. You can even test it in the UI as well by clicking on this preview button and navigate to the account that we created, and even the account consists of one contact, that is Eldred Newman. And if you observe that our generate random has created a name of first name as Eldred, so that it shows that the API works perfectly correct. Thank you.